Nityananda. My name is Ma Nitya Kailasananda. I'm a monastic member of Kailasa. Today I'm speaking not just as a monk of Kailasa, but as a voice for the truth. A truth that has been deliberately twisted by the anti-Hindu media like Times Now. Recently, Times Now published a completely false and malicious article accusing the United States of Kailasa and our spiritual leader, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Sri Nityananda Paramashivam, of defrauding indigenous tribes in Bolivia. This claim is a lie, a continuation of their colonist Hindu-phobic narrative. In this video, we will dismantle their disinformation piece by piece. But before we begin, let me tell you who I am, because I'm not what Times Now tried to portray. I was a highly educated, successful professional in my previous life. I hold 2 master's degrees in science and engineering from prestigious Swedish universities. I worked as a professional purchase engineer in the global renowned Swedish multinational firm. I had everything society calls success. But something deeper caught me. I was inspired by the SPH, my beloved guru, not just by his teachings, but by his immense compassion, selfless service, and tireless sacrifice for humanity. He showed me that life is not just about personal gain, it's about giving, about awakening others, about living in alignment with the highest truth. So I made a choice. I left everything. I renounced my worldly life. I became a Hindu monk. And I found my dream life, a life of deep joy, spiritual awakening, and service. Every day I grew, I expanded, I evolved through the continuous blessings, initiations, and guidance of the SPH. But I also woke up to something darker, something most people cannot even imagine. The brutal, silent persecution of Hindus. As someone who once lived a normal Western life, it was shocking to discover how deep and systematic this persecution is, especially towards the SPH and my fellow Sannyasi brothers and sisters. It's real, it's vicious, it's horrifying. And I never imagined I would become a target myself just because I chose to live a spiritual life. But the worst nightmare came true. In Bolivia, I was kidnapped, held at gunpoint, threatened, detained, manhandled, and illegally expelled, alongside 70 other innocent female monks. No crime, no hearing, no conviction, just raw, unlawful force done by the Bolivia immigration and police, but driven by the Hindu-phobic propaganda from media outlets like Times Now. Hindu-phobic media like you, Times Now, ruined my dream. You shattered my peace. You attacked my life. And so today I speak. This is my voice. This is my story. This is our complaint to the world to expose Times Now and all other who enable racism, religious persecution, and injustice against innocent Hindus. You will not silence us. Times Now, you claimed Kailasa is a fictitious nation with no real existence. This is absolutely false. This isn't just ignorance, it's a deliberate erasure. Kailasa is not fictitious. It is a sovereign spiritual nation, representing the voice, heritage, and aspirations of over 2 billion practicing Hindus and the diaspora across 150 plus countries. It is not only real, it is active, thriving, and deeply rooted in the revival of Sanatana Hindu Dharma. Kailasa is not new. It is a living continuation and revival of 10,000 years of Hindu indigenous nations, kingdoms, sampradayas, and temple civilizations. Kailasa represents a legally, spiritually, and historically grounded nation. According to the Montevideo Convention, a nation must have 4 things: a permanent population, a defined territory, a functioning government, the capacity to engage in international relations. Kailasa meets every single one of these requirements. In fact, Kailasa possesses far more sovereign land than you claimed in your article. Not just in Ecuador, in Bolivia, but across multiple continents. It might be difficult for you to grasp, but Kailasa, as a first nation for Hindus, has been incredibly successful in forging diplomatic ties. We are even building the United Ancient Nations, UAN, a coalition of ancient indigenous nations across the globe. Kailasa is growing at a pace that you cannot even comprehend. You targeted Bolivia, but we are already working on establishing dozens, even hundreds of alliances and locations worldwide. Kailasa is a nation of service, a nation of compassion, a nation built only to give. Kailasa has contributed over 1 billion free Satvic organic meals served for free, 70 plus free healthcare centers and mobile clinics providing Ayurvedic, Siddha and allopathic care, 100,000 plus children given free education and spiritual guidance through Kailasa's gurukuls and online learning platforms. Disaster relief in 16 plus countries, from pandemic response to refugee aid, food security, and women's empowerment. And every service, food, education, health, spiritual empowerment has been offered freely without expectations, without discrimination. And you call that fake? You mock Kailasa as fictitious because you're blind to the living continuity of Sanatana Hindu Dharma. Times now, you claim Nityananda is a fugitive and accused of rape. This is not just a lie, it is deliberate, malicious campaign rooted in anti-Hindu bigotry. Before I address the false accusations, let me ask, why did you drag the SPH into this? He has never set foot in Bolivia, nor has he ever signed any agreements related to it. So why is he being falsely implicated in this matter? And what is the truth? Is the SPH has never been convicted of any crime in any country. Not in India, not in the United States, not anywhere. After more than 120 false legal cases and over a decade of forensic, judicial, and media scrutiny, he remains entirely unconvicted and innocent. All the accusations were completely fabricated. The United States court found the main conspirator guilty of fraud, extortion, and perjury, fining over 500,000 US dollars. Let's be clear, no conviction, no standing warrant, no Interpol red corner, blue corner notice. Still, anti-Hindu media like Times Now keep repeating this line, ignoring international rulings and due process. This is not journalism, this is weaponized disinformation. The same persecution happened in Bolivia. Kailasa-affiliated volunteers, including 18 women, were kidnapped by Bolivian immigration without charges, trial, or warrant. None of them had signed any agreement. The cooperation document between Kailasa and the indigenous nations was not declared illegally by any court. No one was arrested, no one was convicted because we did nothing wrong. If anything illegal had occurred, there would have been a trial, a sentence, a ruling. Instead, there was a coordinated and illegal expulsion, a deep state act, not law enforcement. This proves only one thing, that 18 female victims were innocent. But they are being targeted not by justice, but by geopolitical anti-Hindu forces that fear a global Hindu resurgence. Now, let's talk about the SPH. The same smear tactics, the same unjust attacks. The SPH has been targeted by media, falsely accused and attacked with every possible method. He's been assassinated, poisoned, and subjected to countless fabricated charges. Yet, despite all these vile attempts, he has never been sentenced for any crime. All these facts only prove one thing, the SPH's innocence and the anti-Hindu deep state agenda. These attacks are not about justice, they are about silencing him, eliminating his influence, and destroying the global resurgence of Hindu civilization. The anti-Hindu deep state will do anything to kill and silence the SPH. But no matter how many attacks they launch, they cannot bring down the truth. He has committed no crime. What else can they do except resort to illegal, unjust methods? The anti-Hindu deep state is criminal. You, Times Now, are the criminals, not the SPH. The SPH is under attack, not because of any wrongdoing, but because he is the most influential, most followed Hindu spiritual leader alive today, relentlessly reviving Sanatana Hindu Dharma globally. Despite the attacks, the truth cannot be silenced. The SPH is a legally recognized successor to 21 ancient Hindu indigenous kingdoms. His coronation as the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was not self-proclaimed. It was declared by over 1,000 traditional Hindu leaders in accordance with the sacred tradition of Sanatana Hindu Dharma. Till today, the SPH is the most popular spiritual master on the internet. Over 1 billion views online, over 30 million followers, over 10,000 hours of live teachings, daily guidance streamed in 100 plus countries in 18 plus languages. The SPH's teaching reached millions daily, transforming lives through yoga, meditation, spiritual empowerment, Hindu law, temple science, and more. Thousands of people testify to miraculous healing, freedom from depression and anxiety, rediscovering purpose, and reconnecting with their Hindu identity. This is why he's targeted, because he's awakening Hindus, because he's unstoppable. Times Now, you claim the Kailasa called Bolivia tribes into handling over land. This is absolutely false. This is not just factually wrong, it is a malicious lie, a targeted attack, and part of a deliberate campaign of religious persecution. It is not journalism, it's propaganda designed to criminalize innocent spiritual communities and demonize Hindus. There was no land grab. What actually happened was a cultural and humanitarian cooperation agreement signed lawfully between a US-based Hindu religious nonprofit and the indigenous nations in Bolivia. These nations are recognized under Bolivian law as sovereign entities with full international rights to form such relationships. This was not deception. It was a dignified alliance between two ancient indigenous civilizations built on shared values of spirituality, culture, and service. Bolivia's own constitution and laws protect this kind of cooperation. Article 30 guarantees the right of indigenous people to preserve and develop their spiritual traditions and self-governance. Article 289 and 290 affirm their autonomy and self-determination. Law number 450 explicitly supports indigenous nations forming partnership with external groups that benefit their communities. International law backs it too. Bolivia has ratified every major treaty protecting indigenous rights. Article 36 of UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples affirms that indigenous peoples have the right to maintain spiritual, cultural, and social relations across borders, including with other peoples, and states are obligated to actively support and protect this right. Indigenous and Tribal Peoples Convention ILO Convention 169 protects their right to self-governance and cooperation. American Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, ADRIP, adopted by the Organization of American States, OAS. It recognizes indigenous sovereignty, legal identity, spiritual freedom, and cross-border alliances. Therefore, the agreement signed with the indigenous nations was protected both nationally and internationally. Times Now Did you even read the Bolivian Constitution? Did you study Article 30, Article 289, Article 290? Did you read law number 450? No, you didn't. Did you read actually the agreement? Again, no. But you still run a smear campaign. Why? Because you are not interested in the truth. You don't care about facts. You care only one thing: spreading hate. Aside from the full legality of the agreements, what was actually offered through this cooperation? Free traditional healing services, yoga and meditation programs, humanitarian and including food, medicine, services, youth empowerment, and peace education workshops. These are not the actions of a scam. These are the contributions of a dharmic civilization built on service, integrity, and compassion. What Kailasa and the indigenous nations entered into is not a crime. It was a celebration of indigenous diplomacy. What did you do for the indigenous people in Bolivia times now? Do you even care about them really? And yet, you attacked Kailasa, who is really offering them support, with lies, with colonialist arrogance. What you did times now was not just anti-Hindu, it was anti-indigenous. And your lies contribute to nothing less than cultural erasure and spiritual genocide. We will not be silent. We will speak for the truth, and the world will see you for what you are. We demand you times now, the Hindu-phobic deep state media, the immediate retraction of every false, defamatory, and Hindu-phobic article you have published against the SPH, against Kailasa, and against the sacred sovereign alliances with indigenous nations like those in Bolivia. The immediate removal of your hate speech propaganda that directly fuels violence, religious persecution, and spiritual genocide against the Hindus and the indigenous peoples across the world. A public apology for the lies you printed, the fear you incited, the trauma you triggered, and the deep psychological and cultural damage you inflicted on innocent spiritual women, children, and communities. And let this be known, this is not just a request, this is a formal notice. We will be pursuing legal action against Times Now and every collaborator who contributed to this campaign of hate and misinformation. We will sue you for every act of defamation, for every incitement on hatred, for every crime of delegitimizing Hindu spiritual sovereignty. You will be held accountable in the courts, in the media, and in the conscience of the global community. And remember this, you can try to erase a headline, but you cannot erase a 10,000-year-old civilization. You can attack a few monks, but you cannot destroy the spiritual army of Dharma. You can mock, lie, and defame, but you cannot stop the unstoppable truth of Hinduism rising again. We are not afraid. We are not alone. We are not going anywhere. Kailasa is a spiritual resurrection of a stolen civilization. We are the voice of 2 billion Hindus, echoing across borders, beyond propaganda, louder than your lies. And to every media outlet, every institution, every anti-Hindu power trying to bury the truth, you have underestimated us. This is the beginning of the end of your era of deceit and the rebirth of Sanatana Hindu Dharma. Nityanandan.